Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out today, wherever you are, morning, afternoon, evening. I appreciate you spending time with me. And today we're going to talk about Google and Gemini, and Gemini is kind of the the underlining AI, right, that runs all of kind of Google's ecosystems. And again, there's lots of it. We won't get into every little nook and cranny of everything that they have. I know some of it's confusing because like certain developer tools, there's multiples of them. So I hope to kind of break that stuff down, see where that comes in, see where those things come into play. Um, Talk about again how these things line up with other tools like Azure and Claude and things like that, because again, a lot of similarities between them, between those, right? So we'll kind of go through that within those things. So let's get started. That's me. I'm Mike Luttenberger. I'm the field CTO that covers all things AI here at Netrix. Let's get into it. So this is one of the later numbers or latest things that kind of Google threw out there with it. And again, 3.2 quadrillion tokens monthly is crazy numbers within that. And again, this is just kind of like one of those like my thoughts, feelings, however you want to say that, around this stuff. Is one of the things is 2 years ago or so, a little over a year ago, I guess it was. Google, when it came to AI, like wasn't even in my top 5, right? I'm AI agnostic. I use Copilot. I use Claude. I use ChatGPT. Google wasn't even on my radar because I just felt it wasn't up to par to those other ones. And then last year at Google I/O 2025 version, it was unreal. They just came out swinging with all sorts of new tools, new models, everything, and I felt that they leapfrog so much, right, in capabilities in just a year of what they could do. Because again, it wasn't just the models that they worked on. It's really hard to talk about Gemini or Google AI without talking about the whole ecosystem. Again, we're going to talk about that today. But all the other stuff that went with it, like Vertex, which is kind of transition. We'll talk about that. VO with the videos and all these things, it was just like, holy cow. And then again, just recently coming off of Google I/O 2026, obviously these things have gained new pieces to it, more capabilities within it, more model pieces to it, we'll say, right, around that. And again, we're going to get into all that stuff today, but pretty crazy that the leap happened that quickly, right, in just what I would consider, honestly, a year's time with Gemini. It was quite the leap for them, in my opinion. So here's the model families within here. And again, since we're just coming off of Google I/O 2026, we got some new ones that are, kind of new or latest or however you don't look at that. But very much like if you're coming from a Claude and you're coming from a ChatGPT, right, where you have different models for some are fast, some are deeper thinking, those types of things. Same rules apply here, right? We have Gemini Pro, which is kind of your, reasoning model. You're a deeper, a little bit deeper kind of things you're trying to do with, and a little bit more complex per se, right? But if you're looking for those, very quick kind of answers, that's definitely where Google Flash comes in, right, into play within that. And yeah, so there's different models that kind of fall under the Gemini piece. Like I said, very similar to ChatGPT, very similar to Claude with Sonnet and Opus and all these different ones. Same idea here. Obviously, if you're developing against these, they just like ChatGPT and just like Claude, they all hold different kind of costs per token usage, right? Obviously, the Pro is going to cost more than the Flash, and right, you kind of get that idea. Again, very similar structure to the other ones out there within there. And again, this is just kind of in the Google ecosystem, if you will. And these are the kind of the subscription tiers, if you will, on this. And again, these have this has actually changed recently. Again, at Google I/O, there was pretty much just a there was Ultra, but it was $200 a month. But now they have this like mid Ultra, so that's kind of the new one that just came out at Google I/O 2026. That is half the price of the Ultra. And again, this is pretty much in line with your Claudes, your ChatGPTs, especially if you're getting into those higher token usage or more developer API pieces that you're trying to connect into, this is kind of where it's a no-brainer, right? If you're doing that type of work within here and building all sorts of things within there, right? That you're trying to build, whether it's new systems or software or whatnot, all of that thing will kind of dictate what you're doing. But again, kind of looking at like, we'll say like the 1999 one, the Google Pro, that would be kind of on par, right, with your $20 ChatGPT. You're hard to say like it's like comparable to the $30 Copilot, because I feel like Copilot you get a few extra things that you can build within there within kind of the ecosystem, and there's some give and take with that, right? Same thing with Claude, right? The $20 again, they each have their own kind of unique things to them that they do. Again, not all the models are different, right? They're all different. There's no one model that is trained the same. They're trained similarly, but not. And a great example of this would be, take a single prompt and go and paste it in Gemini, paste it in Claude, paste it in Copilot, paste it in ChatGPT, and while it will answer that, that question or that prompt, that it will answer them slightly differently, right? Off of that. So just kind of depends on you as a user, which one of those you really like, right? And kind of the feedback and the models and the things that you're doing right within there. So they're all slightly different, but this is kind of the breakdown of the currently as we speak today. Could this change? Sure. Without question, this stuff can change at a moment's notice, right? Whenever they decide they need to. And I also believe, I didn't put it on here, but I believe there's also a free one, right, that you can use, just like the other ones, right? Obviously, it has higher limits or more limits than these in here, not higher limits, but more limits in here than what you're seeing on here with the other paid ones. But again, these are the things that are there. And again, some of these, you might be looking at some of these things and saying, I don't even know what some of this stuff is. Again, that's what we're going to talk about when we get a little further into this of some of the workloads. Because like I said, it is, while I applaud Google for all of the stuff that they kind of released last year at I/O 2025, but it was really hard to keep up with this and this. VO does this and Vertex does this, and it was kind of a whirlwind with that. But we'll try and make some sense of it today. So Google Workspace, right? Again, this is something it's kind of integrated in with, like you would expect, right? Your Gmail, your Google Docs, your Sheets, your Slides, your Drive, and even your Google Meet, right? So these are things that where it is plugged in, again, very comparable to Microsoft M365 within there, so that it's going to have those similar things of different, technologies or different things that you can do within a Meet versus like Microsoft Teams, or things that you could do in Word versus Docs, right? Those types of things within here. But again, very similar in things that it can do, looking across different workloads. Like if you're in Word, let's say, and you're using Copilot, and you say, like, look at my email for this customer X and whatever. Again, same thing here. You can do that same exact thing here with Google, right within Docs, right? You'll be able to kind of traverse your system, if you will, right? Your Gmail, your calendar, things that are in your Drive, and be able to pull and push and do things from there within it. So again, very comparable to that. I won't spend too much time on here because again, I figure most folks who are, checking this out kind of understand that idea behind it. But again, it's very comparable to M365 in there, obviously just using Google's models of Gemini within here, but very similar kind of feature comparison or parity between the two of those. And different things, thinking kind of just like with your inbox and in Gmail, like have it dynamically synthesize lengthy email threads, categorize high value tasks, pre-draft replies, right? Those types of things. Coordinate scheduling blocks directly in your calendar within here. Again, those are things that you could do today, right, within here. And again, kind of just bringing in AI into everything, whether you like that or not. Almost every product on earth, I feel, is getting AI in it, from Salesforce to all the, the Adobe suite. So don't think that the Google suite is no different from that, and kind of bringing that into it right within here. Nano Banana. So again, this is one of those ones. It's 2 now, right? So it updated to 2. Several months ago, I think it was. I want to say maybe fall time frame. Please don't quote me on that, but something around that time. But the idea behind this is their 2nd generation image generation tool. Again, pretty good, pretty much on par with ChatGPT's image gen is very good today within there, and very comparable. A lot of really cool things you can do in there. Again, I play with all of these all the time. Again, they all have kind of their pros and cons, or I would even argue styles, right? Like if there's a certain style you have, like again, you hear a lot of folks that will say like, like a ChatGPT brings back things in a certain way and almost like, sometimes uses, which the updated model doesn't, but used to do a lot of like icons and things like that within there versus the others didn't. And again, that's kind of one of those, you like it or you don't like it, kind of that style. Same thing here, right? Go in here, go into Nano Banana to, kind of just say what you want it to do within here. Give it a nice text of a prompt of an image that you're thinking you want it to do right within there, and then we'll go ahead and create that thing for you in different styles, whether it's like photorealistic or this one you're looking at is, I would almost say like a retro 80s, right, kind of feel to it. So again, a lot of these different things in here. Again, that's what what I love about AI is this stuff kind of levels the playing field for a lot of folks, right? There might be a lot of folks that just aren't creative, could never draw or get into Photoshop and kind of make an image like this, but if they think it and they have a really good prompt that really describes the colors and the style and how you want it and how they're, in this case, the person's like almost doing like a selfie. You could see they're holding their hand. Those types of things, like it's all in that, and you can get out, a really good thing. And again, they can iterate on it if it's not, their first, the one that came out isn't exactly what they wanted it to be. But that's kind of the great piece of this is AI is kind of bringing capabilities to people that maybe didn't have that or couldn't do that, in my opinion, within there. Omni. So this is very new, right? So this was released or announced, we'll say, announced at Google I/O 2026. So this is definitely kind of a treading into new territory, but again, I think it's worth talking about. And basically, like I said, we talked about Nano Banana that creates images. Then we talked about Gemini, right? That does things for you within there, right? Whether you're looking up who was the 13th president or whatever, right? Those things, it's finding that stuff out or building that thing out for it. Basically, what this is kind of their first kind of, we'll say it, native multi-model, right? Modal model. To where basically you can do any combination of text and images and audio or video, and then again it can output video for you from that, from kind of giving it that whatever the thing is that you're looking for. So again, I could see some content creation with this, right, of being able to perhaps supply an image of something and give a nice prompt and things like that, and it kind of makes this kind of output for you that you're kind of looking for. Again, I want to say like a commercial, but almost like some sort of content that gets created. Again, we'll talk about more what I would consider commercial or movie level a little bit later on some of the different ones that we can use here. But again, this is pretty cool stuff in my opinion. Like I said, it's kind of blurring that line between what I would consider you're a creative or you're a marketing or you're this, to kind of giving that capability now to anybody with an idea, right? And just being able to prompt really good. Again, I always say prompting is the next language, or is kind of the thing that I think that most people need to get, right? They need to have that kind of skill, because to me it's everything, right? If you can prompt, you can build agents. If you can prompt, you can make AI create all sorts of things that you never thought you could think of. But again, just without being kind of just a single like level, like a video, right? Again, I'm sure you've seen other ones in the past, right? Like by ChatGPT, which they've kind of discontinued now, where it was good, but you could definitely tell it was AI. This is something that's getting more into more real like, right? More kind of storytelling. Again, I would anticipate we're going to see a lot more of things like this, whether that's good or bad, right? I know there's a lot of AI slop out there, but again, I think this could be a very good thing if used correctly. Agent platform. So again, if you've been around the AI, Google AI specifically for the past year, you would have known that there was something called Vertex. This is kind of the next step, if you will, to it. This is, I guess we'll call it a 2.0, right, of what it was. And basically what this is allowing, right, is it's kind of the unified machine learning platform, right? 200 plus different models in here in what Google calls the model garden, right? In there, and again, there's Claude, there's Llama and things like that in there, right? So you can use a bunch of different ones within there, and again, you can tune and train, right, within there, and kind of the new evolution of this is of Vertex is now what's called the agent platform, right? And it's kind of evolved into that, right? So now it's considered Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, right? That's what it is now. And again, you can do all the fun things that you could do in Vertex, but more now, right? Now it's more not only agent building, which again, I feel like 2026 is definitely the year of the agent. Everybody's kind of going into the agent direction, whether that's a single purpose built agent or again, an agent that handles multi things. But again, in here, you can use, development kit within here. Again, you can scale this to just prototyping something and then again, scaling it to full enterprise usage, right? Within there if you want. So lots of things to do here, but this is kind of your new agent platform, if you will. That's there to help you start building some stuff within there. But again, pretty cool stuff. Lots of different things coming out this year. Also a new one, Pomeli. So think of it as I like to call it the brand builder, right? So again, if you are coming from a Claude, which has a design, which is also still in beta, but it has a design feature to where you can give it colors or you can give it images or you can give it kind of your brand tone or guideline, and it builds like kind of this whole design system of based off of that stuff. I've done that in Claude where I've taken just a single image and said basically make a whole brand around this, and it asks you some questions, and you know like what kind of is it professional tone, is it humorous tone, is it like all that stuff, and it comes out with everything that's kind of your brand kit, if you will. So this is Google's kind of dipping the toe into that same thing, right? To where you could just upload raw, photographs, and it will kind of look at it and start making a brand out of it, create a brand book, right, for you that will have, the beautiful custom branded websites and, could be created from it, from there. So again, think of it as kind of a marketing tool, right? Or I don't want to say like a marketing agency as a whole, but again, you get the idea there. But again, it can produce, Instagram posts, Facebook ads, YouTube assets, all from kind of URLs. So it's kind of business first, if you will, right? It's going to kind of push you into a brand or make your brand for socials and your site and all that fun stuff. Campaign ideas, right? You can do all that fun stuff in there. And again, it's not a one and done, right? It's something that you can iterate on over and over and add new things to it. So again, I think that is pretty cool in my opinion, with the ability to do all of those things within there, right? Because that's kind of where it's going now. Is a lot of these things are right giving kind of different capabilities to people that might not have had them. Google AI Studio, not new. It's been around since again last year, right? 2025 Google I/O. Actually, I think it was out slightly before that. I could be wrong on that, but again, it's gained some new capabilities with Google I/O 2026. But just think of it as kind of the fastest way to prototype with Gemini. I mean, that's like the tagline I can give you, right, for it of what it is. Basically, you could start building from a browser tab, open it up, just start prompting it, prompt playground, right? Test prompts across different Gemini models, right? Give it different parameters. Within there, again, you could build full-blown apps from it, from a prompt, sorry, and then kind of deploy and kick that over to something else. Again, software development kit pieces within there that you can use. I would say it's for more developer kind of data scientists, although you could even go down, to someone who may not be developer level that is more in kind of the prototyping phase of it. Again, as long as I would assume or recommend that it stays kind of in a prototype and not a production environment. But again, this can help, it's a playground for building and testing and deploying basically AI models and agents within there, which is fairly user friendly, right? Not as what I consider like hardcore developer, which again, we'll talk about in a minute, which can get a little bit deeper than this. And again, this is also my opinion of kind of the Google suite, is that because they have kind of multiple development pieces to it, or different things that do similar things that we're going to talk about in a second, like when we talk about Flow and VO, and it's confusing because they sort of do the same thing, but they're almost like what I would say is more role, right, specific or persona specific. So again, Google just taking a different approach to it. But again, just talking with customers and users all the time, there is some confusion because, well, doesn't this one sort of do that? And where does this one end? Again, try and make sense of all of those things today. Also new. So this was also released. And again, I sound like an absolute broken record, just keep saying that, oh, released at Google I/O 2026. But again, I just want to kind of talk or throw out where things are new, because again, this is new, and I think it needs some talking to about it, because this is kind of, you could see this is where they're going right with it. I think that they're kind of go into this area more. Again, I talked about it a second ago, more agentic within there, so that there is going to be more of that in there. And basically, Gemini Spark it's an autonomous AI. Spark it's all the time in the background, taking action, on your behalf in kind of across the Google ecosystem, right, without requiring manual prompting every time. So think of it as an if then else, right? If something happens, do said thing automatically, if you want it that way. Again, it will monitor your Gmail and your Google Drive and your calendar and other connected apps like that. It can track ongoing tasks, surface relevant content, or context around those things, and then again can take action when appropriate, right, around those things within it. Again, compiles meeting notes across emails and chats and kind of polishes it all up into a nice Google Doc, as an example of what it could do, or get an email draft for kind of a project kickoff based off a couple other things. So again, there's a few kind of things you could think about that could do in the background for you. But again, you as the user maintain full control over when Spark will operate, which apps it will connect to, the types of approvals that you want it to do before it does it. Again, you're in control of that stuff as it is, so you don't have to worry about this thing kind of roguely running out and building or replying to emails and all this stuff with kind of out your consent. And again, you're in control of what that looks like, how that's going to be, how it's going to react to things, how it's going to answer things. If you just wanted to kind of get drafts together and then you hit send, if you will, those are the types of things that I can do for you. Anti-gravity. So this hit kind of 2.0. Again, this was a pretty exciting, in my opinion, when it first was kind of launched, for what I would consider kind of autonomous or agent-driven coding, right? I guess that's kind of what I'll say around that, is that right, it's kind of your agent-first development platform where kind of AI agents autonomously plan, execute, right, verify kind of engineering tasks. Not that the others didn't, right? Claude had something similar, but you would generally always have to kind of interact with it. It would just bring some things in. Again, this is back before anti-gravity 1. You were always kind of having to, approve or stop different things at different points in time to do that. Same thing with GitHub for Copilot. Same thing with Codex, right, within ChatGPT. But this was kind of the first, like, it just would like build and look over things first. And this is kind of the version 2 of it, right? Within here, it's, and initially launched version 1 was in November of 2025. And this is kind of the upgraded part to it. And again, it was, in my opinion, right, my opinion only, is that it was very beta in November. You could see where it could be very cool, like where they were going with this and where it could be very helpful to a developer. But it also, did some things that you're just like, oh, like, why would it do that? But again, it was very much a beta. I would see this as a more kind of mature model of it, right? But again, it has a lot of different sub agents that can happen, right? And the idea behind that is that, an agent executes something and then has, autonomously, the agent will handle kind of end-to-end tasks like writing code, right? Launching applications, testing functionality without human interacting, but then it can dynamically spin up sub-agents, right, to, look at workflows, on parallel workflows, schedule background tasks, those types of things within there. So, and it can integrate into like Android and Firebase and Chrome extensions, right, to have these things within there. So again, pretty cool system here. Again, a lot of different ways to do it, right? SDK, desktop, Again, there's API and all that fun stuff, however you want to kind of attach yourself to it within there. But again, it is well received, I think, for what it has done. Also new, again, on record, apologize everybody, but Web MCP. So Web MCP is basically kind of an open standard, right, that Google's going with here that basically enables kind of your website to, make functions discoverable by AI agents. Again, Microsoft has done something very similar to this within there to certain structures so that it can, extract those things from there. So it's kind of like an MCP, but for your website, if you will, right? So the agents or the models can basically, interact with it within there rather than, native capabilities rather than just like screen scraping, right? Which a lot of them do. And again, it's got different skills within it, right? So there are different performance, accessibility, things that it can do within there. And then again, you can have anti-gravity, right? Kind of install that piece for you. And again, there's dev tools that are part of it, right, within here. But again, this is just very much, think of this as a beta at the moment. It was just announced at Google I/O 2026. So we'll see where this goes. But, this is kind of, Google's push for standardizing agent-based interaction layer, if you will, right? Kind of on top of sites, if that makes sense. And then again, it will also help with browser automation, which again, I see a bigger play in here, which again, I'm sure everybody here has seen different, things from Perplexity and whatnot to where they can run things within your browser. Very similar, again, I think is where this is kind of going with that, is that it understands where buttons are and stuff like that so that it can act on your behalf. So we'll see where this goes. VO. So again, this is where things can get a little confusing. I will try and make sense of this over the next few slides, but VO, not new. It really, I would say, took traction last year at Google I/O 2025. Google showed off like, I don't know, it was like a 10 or 15 second like commercial with it, which was pretty amazing. You really couldn't tell the voice and the sound that was within it made it so kind of immersive and real feeling, but it was, just created by a prompt. And there were some pretty crazy ones that I've seen out there. And then again, shortly after that release, I saw all sorts of like little like YouTube shorts of like 10-second or 20-second or 30-second kind of little movies of it, which is again very impressive, right? Within this. And now it's kind of gone on, it's now at 3.1 is the latest version, VO 3.1 in there. So again, you can kind of natively synchronize audio and real world kind of physics within a video model, right? It's going to generate a video for you, dialogue, ambient sounds, any music that might have to be part of it in the background. There's physics to it, right? So it's got realistic motion. And again, this is where I think OpenAI's was a little different from this, because some of the physics, again, in my opinion, were a little off on some of the videos. It was very obvious it was, right, generated by AI, because sometimes like I'm sure most of you have seen where it shows like the robot in the cornfield and he's like taking down the different crops, but you could see it was almost like elevated a few inches off the ground because the physics weren't there to make it look like he was truly walking through the field. That is kind of gone with VO, right? It has kind of real physics accuracy of gravity and fluids of, moving things in, fluid or water, real behavior, material behavior, I guess is what I like to say within there. And then again, from the prompt, you have creative controls of, angles, camera angles and lighting and, all sorts of stuff like that within there. So, and again, I don't have it as part of kind of this, but it's worth talking about. Again, I have kind of like an other slide and more at the end that talks about other things, but one of them is Synth ID. And again, that's not new. They talked about that last year, but really what it is watermarking to let you know that it was generated by AI, right? So that is there. So that is also part of this. So you don't have to worry about some, deep fake happening because it's going to be watermarked with Synth ID. So again, bringing some safety to these things where they could potentially get out of hand. Notebook LM. Okay, so this is not new. Notebook LM, I think, has been around for 3 or 4 years, but obviously years ago it got some AI capabilities. Notebook LM is pretty interesting. I would say there's a lot of folks that this is kind of their entry either into AI or definitely into the Google Suite because, like I said, Notebook LM has been around for a really long time. Think of it as like a bunch of folders or a folder that you create and you ground everything in it. So you give it documents, PDFs, you give it URLs, right, to different like YouTube videos and things like that, right? PDFs, slide decks, different web pages, all sorts of stuff like that. And once you've placed it all in this particular notebook, again, you can have many notebooks within there, is now you can start asking it questions, right? And it's grounded in those items that you have versus, right, if you're using just Gemini and you start asking it questions about something, let's say Google I/O, right? So if you just go into Gemini and you start talking about Google I/O 2026, it's going to pull back all sorts of different websites, could be hundreds or dozens. But if you create a notebook LM for Google I/O 2026, you can bring in either the YouTube videos and or blog posts and or documents around that. And then once you start asking in that notebook, then you are grounded in whatever you've brought into that notebook. It's not looking outside into hundreds or thousands of other sources on that. So that's what's really cool with it. However, where it really shines is what I consider, or what's considered, the audio overview. So basically what it is again, you can bring all of this stuff in there. Again, Notebook LM is very popular with students because you can bring things in there when you're trying to study. It can make quizzes for you, right? Based off of the stuff that's in there. So it's a really great learning tool. It shows mind maps, right, of how things are connected and they're interactive and all that stuff. But the audio overview is really cool. So the audio overview is you can select that and it will have 2 AI hosts, podcasts, however you want to make, that gets generated from the source, right, in minutes. And again, if you're someone who commutes on a train or drive or whatever, it's awesome to take kind of the notebook, create an audio overview of all the things that are in it. And then from there, you're able to listen to kind of an audio overview of the stuff. It's awesome. It doesn't sound like AI. I use this all the time. It's really cool. Within there, you can also have video overviews where if you don't want to listen, but you want to watch, you're a more visual person, you can make video overviews and it will create basically AI narrated videos built off of your sources that are in this notebook. Within there, you can also create presentations from it. Within there, again, pull all the data in there, and then just ask it to create your presentation, and it will do that for you. Again, very cool. These are really neat. And again, there's a bunch of stuff that Google keeps adding to this, but this is one of those, I would say, like soft entry points into not only AI, but even the Google ecosystem. Again, I know lots of folks who use different models, like maybe they're just like a Claude person or they're a ChatGPT person, but they always use Notebook LM for something, right? Because of its features in with those two. But again, it's pretty cool. And again, why would you do this, or why is that important that you have all this grounded? And again, this is more just general AI, is that once you have something grounded in that, it's less likely to hallucinate because it's just looking at the stuff that you're giving it versus a big model, or it's going to go out and search on its own. So it's very helpful in that. But these are great. Again, audio reviews, mind maps, videos, presentations, FAQs. You make tests, all sorts of things out of the data that's in here. So it's really awesome. Okay, Google Flow. So this is where things got slightly confusing. So we talked about VO3, right? So that's VO3 is just the average person going in and making a video. Google Flow is, again, I call it cinematic AI, right? That's what we're going to say, is kind of using now not only VO, but also images and audio. And basically this can create, I don't want to say a movie, but cinematic clips, right? Because will it go to that? Maybe, right? Will it go there? Maybe. Again, I know there's lots of controversy, which I don't want to get into, about AI in movies and things like that. And this is kind of one of those things that is why people are talking about it and why it's kind of a disruptor within that, is because you are seeing time and time again where folks are doing that kind of AI filmmaking. And like I said, it's using Gemini, it's using VO, Imagen, which is another model around pictures, right? And basically kind of that end-to-end storytelling of creating, scenes and music and all that stuff that goes in there, kind of prompt based and whatnot within there. So again, it's pretty interesting to see. Again, this is newer, but it will be interesting to see the things that come out of this, right? That if there is um, more mainstream movies around this, or again, if there's more kind of YouTube content maybe with this, again, interesting to see where the future will be with this one. Stitch again. So Stitch is not new. It was also introduced last year at Google I/O 2025. And just think of this as again kind of your prototyper, right? Of it, kind of your UI UX prototyping system agent, right? Design skills, right around that. And basically, what it does is it turns kind of natural language into high fidelity UI, designs front end code, right? So you can actually have it that as the term is said, like vibe design instead of vibe code, right? That you can basically prompt your way kind of through that against applying it with some different things in there, put prompts in it, put screenshots in it, maybe even code snippets, right? If you have like an HTML page or a page that's got some of that in there into kind of one workspace and begin prototyping on how, again, a mobile app should look, or a website should look, or an application, a desktop application or something like that within there. So again, pretty cool with that. And then again, you can, put it or export it right out to Figma, right? From here, if that's kind of your workflow within here. So again, pretty cool. Just another kind of tool at your disposal within kind of this whole, like I said, Google suite that we'll say within here. Cloud. So again, there is cloud in the back end of all of this, not just what you're using, but if you want to build kind of applications on here, right? So it's using the latest and greatest TPU architecture from Google. Actually, I see this as 6, and I think just again at Google I/O 2026, it just changed over to 7, version 7 of it. But it's the kind of the infrastructure layer that powers Google's models, right, for everyday customer workloads from within there. And again, think of this as kind of your again, if you're in the Microsoft world, this is kind of your Azure, right, environment, to where you have compute and storage and networking and all of this fun stuff, kind of your platform services needed to train and fine tune and serve AI workloads at scale. Again, very much like Azure Foundry, within kind of the Google ecosystem within there, within that piece. So again, developers and enterprise ready people can get in there and data pipelines and security controls and observing all of these things and integrating with business systems, and then you're good to go. So like I said, we're kind of wrapping up here towards the end, but I just kind of wanted to visualize this. And again, hopefully you see it's looking a little small for mine, but I'll kind of go through this. But we kind of have what I consider different layers of this, right? We have kind of the experience layer, right, where I'm as a user interacting, right? So it's the Gemini app, it's Workspaces, right, and Google Workspace, whether I'm in that or Search or Chrome or Android, right? That's kind of where I'm interacting with this thing as an end user, right? Then we have kind of our agent layer, right? So that's going to be Spark, which we talked about. Enterprise agents, again, was Vertex. Within here, again, web MCP and MCP and all that fun stuff in here. A to A is agent to agent. So bringing all of those things in here, again, these are all open, pretty much standard protocols that, again, Microsoft uses A to A and MCP, and so does Claude and all that fun stuff. Then we have our kind of builder layer, right? So again, this is a couple different suites, we'll say, right, from AI Studio to anti-gravity to the agent platform to just, again, Gemini API if you want to like hook up to like VS Code or something like that, right? Where you can build it as a developer or just even as a non-developer within here. And then again, you have our model layers, right? So we've got Gemini Pro and Flash and Light and Omni's new and Image and VO and Imagen and Live for voice and stuff like that. So these are kind of the different layers I look at it, right? Or kind of this is the ecosystem, right? It's not just one thing, which again I think can sometimes be confusing, right? Is that it's not just one thing, it's many things. and more, right? So like I said, there are so many things we didn't even get into today. We'd probably make a, several hour video, which no one would want to watch, of that. But again, there are other things that are, I guess, sort of worth talking about, or worth just kind of throwing in here, and mentioning is, like one is there's something called Product Genie, and the three, which again, why I didn't necessarily make a slide for it, because I feel like these are more niche things, not necessarily the average user would want this, but this is basically generating 3D environments, right? By prompts, by static drawings, by a screenshot, and it can have a whole interactive 3D, navigatable, not sure that's a word, it will be today, 3D world, right? And it kind of hooks into Google Maps to where you can use some of those things too. So again, interesting, right? Maybe if you're doing video games or something like that, that would be something on there. Then we got the Gemma models. So these are open models. They are built off of the same research and kind of, proprietary Gemini systems, right? That are in there. But these are open weight, right? Highly customizable, custom hardware tuning, all that fun stuff. So if you were like, yeah, I kind of like what Google did with Gemini, however, I want to build off of that and do my own thing, this is kind of where you go for that. Lyra 3, we're at version 3 now, and this is a music generator, right? So you can feed it some tracks, right? Maybe you made something on your computer, you could feed it that, and it can break out and make more music out of it. It will bring in vocals, it will do, lyrics to that, full instrumental backings, right? Just off of prompts within there. So again, you could feed, images up to it, and we'll kind of take the underlining mood, right, and style of that and make like, music out of it. It's interesting. Again, this is more, I would say, niche, not the average user is going to do that. Gemini audio, sorry. That again is probably a little bit more streaming than this, but again, it's generates natural human sounding speech patterns with, dynamic emphasis, so it doesn't sound like a robot. Pitch adjustments, local accents, dozens of language, optimized, customer engagement type of things. Think almost like call center type of things. So again, Microsoft has this too, so does OpenAI. So this is kind of Google's flavor of it. And then there's Gemini Code Assist. So again, last one I'll talk about. Gemini Code Assist is helping. This is, I would say, the bigger picture of code, right? So it could auto migrate from legacy code architectures to modern tech frameworks, right? This can, again, think of an app modernization that might take many, many months. This can significantly lower that, right, of kind of doing that. It can proactively scan repositories, right, to identify, patch syntax errors, memory leaks, hidden security risks, search and refactor, millions of lines of your code, right, your proprietary code, across, multiple directories and repos, simultaneously. So it could do it all at the same time. Again, kind of multi-agent there. But again, it's kind of that AI developer, right, that is looking at all of these things and making sure that all of your code is at a certain standard, right? That again, if you're at legacy code, or again, that you're out there trying to make something more modern or whatnot, but being able to go through that. So, that's a great thing in my opinion, right? Especially as we're getting more, kind of into that agentic kind of development of creating things. This is going to be very important to do. And again, interesting also times to see just how, times have been shaved off of certain things. I could tell you one thing, I've seen a lot of that in my time, to tasks that took me perhaps, 8 hours or 16 hours to develop, that I'm able to do the exact same quality and code and whatnot in, an hour or less. So it's pretty impressive. And that is it today. So again, if you want to know more about Google Gemini, or you need help build it and you're not sure where to begin, definitely reach out to us. We can help you navigate that, get use cases, develop on top of those things. Whatnot. Again, there's nothing wrong with, having a mix of the two. Like I said, I if I have lots of folks who use, either Copilot or a Claude, but they still come back to Notebook LM. So again, there's different features in all the different ones. There's not one that is, the best. They each kind of do this over time, right? Where they become the best, and then a couple of months later, just kind of leapfrog each other. And again, that's just kind of the space we are at right now with these LLMs. So again, I appreciate everybody's time today. I thank you so much for spending your time with me, and hopefully you learned something new today, and hopefully I hear from you soon. Have a good one.